March of the Machine preview season is officially upon us, and so we just learned of all of the mechanics in the set. So in this video, we're going to be talking about each of the major mechanics in the set, how they work, answer some common questions, and just talk about the set overall. Let's jump right into this, starting with Incubate. Incubate is a brand new mechanic from March of the Machine, but it follows very similar to a mechanic like Investigate, where you are going to be creating artifact tokens. These ones, however, are a little bit different. When you are instructed to incubate, you are instructed to incubate a number. So for example, Merciless Repurposing is 4 black for an instant, exile target creature, then incubate 3. So in essence, you would make an artifact token that has no abilities other than you can pay 2 and transform it, and then it enters with 3+1/+1 counters. Then at any time, you can pay 2 mana to transform it into a 0/0 Phyrexian. So think about it like a clue. A clue, you pay the 2 mana to draw a card. Here, you're going to pay the 2 mana to actually activate your creatures, which are actually really interesting because they dodge things like board wipes and can help you kind of bounce back from a lot of destruction-based spells. It's very cool, and I'm really curious to see how we're going to see cards interact with it. In addition, there are cards in the set that we've already seen that care about when cards transform, and cards that care about just, Phyrexian artifacts, all of those type of things. So this will be a really interesting mechanic in that way. There are also cards that just flip all your incubators. So for example, the brand new Elish Norn on her Saga side does flip all of them. So does the new Glissa. And so there's gonna be lots of ways to flip them, lots of ways to interact with this mechanic. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I don't think there's any necessarily weird interactions with it, but just know this is the first transforming token we've ever seen. And that's pretty cool. But if you guys have any particular rules questions that I'm not thinking of, leave them in the comments down below. Alright, next up we have Backup. This is another mechanic where it's going to come with a number, so like Backup 1, Backup 2. And in this case, what'll happen is when a creature with Backup enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter or a number of +1/+1 counters equal to that number on target creature. So it's very similar to Incubate where the number is equal to the number of counters. However, what's cool about Backup is if it's another creature, so if it doesn't put the counter on itself and gives it to something else, that creature also gains the following abilities until end of turn. And by following abilities, it means all abilities underneath where it says Backup 1. For example, Boonbringer Valkyrie would give a creature flying, first strike, and lifelink until end of turn in addition to a +1/+1 counter. Now, it is important to note that it is until end of turn, but overall, it's really, really interesting, and I think this is kind of like a fixed version of Mutate, where your creatures can come together, share some abilities here and there, but it's not a permanent thing. It doesn't cause a rules headache, and I think this is a really, really cool mechanic. It is really interesting to see how 2 of the mechanics that we've already talked about care about counters so heavily, and we just came from a set that had a ton of Proliferate, so I'm really interested to see how these cards are going to affect things like Standard, where Proliferate is in a plentiful supply. Alrighty, next up we have Transforming Double-Faced cards. This one, unlike the previous 2, is nothing new, so we're not going to spend that much time talking about them, but essentially these are cards with 2 faces where you are going to have them enter as the front face, and then some condition causes them to flip. Every card we've had spoiled so far, outside of a special type of card, which we'll get to next, all flip after paying a mana cost. So for example, Elish Norn has you pay 3 mana and sack some creatures to flip her over, which then has a Saga on the other side. We've also had cards like Heliod, who just pays a mana cost to then flip over to the other side. Nothing new, but it is still cool to see it return. Now, I think the most exciting mechanic that most people are going to agree on is the brand new type being added to Magic the Gathering. We have types now like Creature, Artifact, Enchantment, Planeswalker, and Planeswalker is actually the newest type of all of them, but we are getting battles, which actually look very different to normal Magic the Gathering cards because, well, they're flipped. So let's take a look at Invasion of Ikoria. This is a battle siege. So this is a type of battle. All of them in the set are double-faced cards, and we've only seen sieges. I assume this is here just to allow them to have alternate types in the future if they decide to switch it up. But how it works is as a siege enters, you get to choose an opponent to protect it. Then you and other people at the table can attack that battle. When it's defeated, you exile it and then get to cast the backside of the card without paying its mana cost. So think about it like a Planeswalker, but instead of you having to be the one to defend it, you give it to your opponents to defend, and if you manage to break through their defenses, you get another bonus. So you get kind of a small benefit for playing it upright, or maybe a large one, depending on what the card is, and then you get an additional benefit after you actually destroy the battle. It works very similarly to Planeswalkers, but in the bottom right, there's a health counter. So for example, this one has a health of 6, And so basically it has to be dealt 6 damage in order to be defeated. This works the same as planeswalkers and players in terms of damage as well. So cards that say deal damage to any target can now hit battles. However, if something says deals damage to target player, it cannot hit the battle. And there will be cards that specifically can target battles to deal damage. So expect things like, when this enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle. So that'll get a little wordier in the future, but overall it's really cool. So looking at Invasion of Ikoria, it's X green for a battle siege, and when it enters the battlefield, you search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less and put it on the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So a pretty good effect at green X. That is definitely a pretty awesome ability that you might play on its own, but then you also give it to your opponent that they have to protect. Then, once you do destroy it, or someone else destroys it if they want to help you, you get Zilortha, Apex of Ikoria. It's an 8/8 legendary creature dinosaur with reach, and it says for each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. So a very big effect. This is a perfect example of a battle. You're going to get something right away, and then you're probably going to get some value later on, if not right away. The one thing to consider is that if you play this while your opponents have no creatures and then have the ability to attack, it doesn't seem that unreasonable to be able to do both in one turn, assuming your opponents just aren't worried about it. Now, this one's 6, and having just 6 power that can easily swing through is a lot, but some of them are lower. Some of them only have 3 health or 3 defense counters, as they call it. Overall, this is a really awesome mechanic, and I'm excited to see how it works. Note that there currently are no spells that just say, like, destroy target battle. These are going to be some of the hardest, cards to interact with, but similar to Planeswalkers over time, I expect not only will they evolve what battles do, but we'll get more cards that interact with them in general. I'm not sure how much I love the whole sideways card thing. I feel like it might be a little obvious when you're at pre-release, when you, turn your head 90 degrees to read a card that, oh, you probably just drew a battle, but seems like there are going to be a lot of them in this set, and I'm very excited to see it. Now, one thing I am curious about is whether battles will become a thing on every single set, or if it's just going to be something in occasional sets. If it's a whole new type, I would expect it to be like an every set kind of thing, but it is possible that, similar to conspiracies and stuff like that, they are a unique thing for a couple sets, and it doesn't really have to be in every set. I don't know, though, because, when was the last time we had a set without a planeswalker or an artifact or something like that? So it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious how this mechanic will evolve, and I think it's the most interesting part right now. Either way, guys, those are the major mechanics of the set. There is something to note. They announced a couple sets back that some of the older mechanics may be coming back on 1 or 2 cards. They found that it is easier for players, not actually harder for players, if they use flashback instead of just describing what flashback does. So, in spoiler season, we might see something with battle cry or flashback or something, but these are the main mechanics of the set. I want to know your guys' thoughts on everything in the comments down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.